if your business doesn't know what you want to get from the marketing, you will never be successful in marketing. Measuring something is not always good, because if the measurement is wrong, the outcome of this is going to be really. AI is like a very, very smart intern that works for you, but then the intern needs the tools, the pointer, documentation, and everything around it. You can't have a safe AI journey. It's either you can like people on board of it and then people start producing something wrong, or you just don't have them using it.
This is Measurement Layer. I'm Kostya. I spent more than 10 years working on one problem, making marketing measurement actually work. Today I'm talking to Roman Petrochenkov, Head of Analytics for Marketing and Media at CarWow. Roman is one of the few people I found who has been on both ends of this problem. He managed a 14 million euro paid media budget at Omio and then spent 5 years rebuilding the data layer underneath marketing at CarWow. Most people I talk to have one side or the other. He has both. So today we are unpacking the gap between what a business needs from its data and what the data can actually deliver. Roman, good to have you here.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm very happy to be here.
Nice. Let's start with orientation. Give us please the 60-second picture of what you own at CarWow, the size and the shape of your team, and how you would describe the gap between what the business needs from the data and what it can actually deliver.
There's a lot to unpack here, to be fair. So I'm head of analytics for these two verticals of media and marketing. And for the last 5 years, as I've been at CarWow, majority of my goals were about solving two problems at once. One of them is getting the data in, modeling the data, making sure that it makes sense, creating definitions, and at the same time trying to drive the business decisions and driving questions forward. So it comes from all the point of technical ETL, DBT, and let's say Tableau BI solutions to, let's say, okay, what's the CAC, what's the LTV for the business, how do we get the value-based bidding working and all things around. Recently, I have pivoted mostly for analytics as the business grows and our foundation for data is actually figured out quite well and the marketing pipeline works very, very much reliably. My goal for the end of the year would be to take my team and bring to the next level of analytics, where we try to ask more strategic long-term questions and understand where the business should get to. We have multiple different business verticals. They all work kind of together with each other, but they have different monetization around it. So connecting all of these things together is a real challenge for me. And this is what essentially the challenge for the end of the year and for the 2027 going to be.
Sounds like a great plan. But before we proceed discussing those sophisticated plans, let's focus on the gap itself, because that's the part most teams never name out aloud. You said that the gap is where money gets wasted and decisions get made on gut feel. Where does it show up first? Is it tracking, definitions, or something else entirely?
I think it depends on the week. Like it goes all the way around. But again, it really depends on where you are in the business right now. Tracking is something for us that we have to figure out regularly. We need to learn regularly as the requirements change, as consent changes, as everything around what platform allows you to do changes. We constantly need to be on the edge of it. Let's say Google Ads tomorrow releases a new functionality. That means that tomorrow we're going to be behind on where we want to be. And our goal as a business is constantly try to have as maximum technical capabilities as possible. Now, this is a constant challenge, a constant like race against the time. And if you don't have anything there, you break behind. There's nothing else you can do about it. But even without tracking, you can still drive traffic. You can have business working, just not even close to efficiency you want. The definition is a strategically complex question. Like if your business doesn't know what you want to get from the marketing, you will never be successful in marketing. And this is something that is really hard to figure out. Let me give you an example. You might buy leads and transactions. This is one of the ways you can sort things out, and it has ups and downs and things to solve. You can say, I want to buy specific basically user definitions that do certain things, and you go into CAC and LTV conversation. Well, most businesses doing CAC and LTV in one way or another, but again, it really heavily depends on what's the acquisition strategy. You can have an app, you can have a web, you can have 50-50 around it. And in my experience, if you don't have a clear definitions of what actually drives money long-term to the business, it takes months to solve. Whereas tracking is a technical exercise. You can basically hire consultants to go and figure it out. Figuring out definitions is a uphill battle that you need to take within a company to actually get to the point, what does the good look like 2 years from now, 1 year from now?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm also wondering, in the organization of your size and scale, who usually notice the gap first? Is it marketing or finance?
Well, again, depends on the size of it. So finance is there to make sure we're driving all towards one goal and we get to the P&L we want and we get to the business health we want. Whereas marketing will be very much deep into the processes. And there is a huge difference between one and another. And in CarWow, for example, everybody's extremely into the numbers and understand what they do. So both of the conversations are very high level, very deep level. So everybody understands what we're talking about. For example, with marketing, we're going to be talking about how do we get the granularity of the data from Google Ads to align with the goals and the product. And at the same time, next day, I'm going to have a conversation with finance saying to hit this P&L, we need to have this budget allocation. And both of these conversations can coexist and both of them can actually highlight things, but things they highlight are going to be very different. And if you have something wrong with P&L, those questions usually needs to be resolved way quicker, but also they usually are driven from a big problems here and there. For example, your funnel might be broken or your competitors came up with a completely different product, and now you need a solution that will align both with product and legal and marketing. Whereas things that marketing highlight is, for example, consent rate is dropping, or the certain page is not tagged, which is usually way quicker to execute.
Okay, that's the kind of complexity I anticipated, and it basically leads us to the next question about how to survive scrutiny of different stakeholders and alignment. I assume it could be a great source of knowledge about that. So as you are an analytical partner to the SEO and CMO, whatnot, every senior stakeholder tends to have their own definition of what a conversion is or what is an efficiency. How do you actually get alignment, and what happens when you don't?
I think getting a full alignment across senior stakeholders is not even a good state to be in, because it's good when people have different perspectives and they argue and they try to bring different, basically sitting down and constantly trying to get business better does not come from 6 people agreeing with each other. It's very rarely you're going to get forward when everybody agrees with everybody. Figuring out the framework and prioritization and what needs to be, that's where the key is. So for example, everybody needs to agree that our number one goal is to hit the targets in Q3, and then we are ready to sacrifice this. We need to hit this. You might go for revenue, you might go for expansion, you might go for the profitability, you want to hit certain EBITDA, all of these things, they dictate on how the business makes the decisions. But the decisions this is where my team is going to sit, is driven from that. So for example, your marketing stakeholder might want to jump and say, well, we need to go for MMM solution, incrementality solution. This is what on the market is discussed a lot nowadays. If you're going to go that direction, you need to also sit down and say, hey, the MMM conversation is a 6-9 months conversation. Does it align with the goals? Does it align with where we want to get to? At the same time, they might say, well, we actually need to launch a new business product. One of the hardest and most interesting things to go through is when business constantly evolves and you have an of bringing a new vertical. So for example, you open a new direction and then you need to build everything from scratch in that direction. Obviously, that's going to take over priority of something else. But yeah, I'm talking a lot about there is no clear answer to how make everybody agree. But the business needs to dictate what's the number one, what's number two, what's number three priority. And then from there, you sit down and try to navigate it with the stakeholders together.
And the framing is really good. I like it a lot. It's you're talking about not actually aligning the people, but taking different perspective and letting them coexist around the actual reality based on your data. So the different opinions should just resonate, not kind of get into one common denominator.
100%. I think one of the problems that we have in general in life and in our type of jobs as analysts is that there is a feeling that, somebody might be the smartest person in the room and somebody doesn't want to hear you out. But the business is a lot of very smart people trying to get somewhere and have different perspectives on the same problem. You might not have enough supply. You might not have enough demand. You might not have enough engine that connects to supply and demand. And then they're going to have different Even conversations with legal are absolutely crucial for marketing at certain stage. You need to have your consent figured out. You need to be protected and safe. You need to make sure that you do everything the way you should be doing. And if at every single point you come to conversation with legal and think of legal as a blocker, as a problem creator, you will never get to move as quickly as you need. However, the alternative solution is you could sit down like, okay, how do I make sure legal understands what I want them to do? How do I get them on board with my goal? And then how do I get like the best possible review from them so they are very much feeling that they contribute to us moving forward? This is another big thing. There is no way you're going to be like number one in marketing and tracking and then solutions unless you know how to get the ideas and then get other people on board and work together. It's all about collaboration, especially in the companies of like few hundred people. You will never be like a solo person who drives everything. It's impossible.
Your approach appeals to me a lot. I would utilize that for future and recommend everyone to do that as well. So it's better to work in the teams rather than to work against each other, and the opinions might exist together.
I think the funniest thing for me is that I have been that one person who was like, I can do everything. And I learned the hard way that the best outcome took me, like, it was a long time ago, but like the best outcome is to make sure that I get other people on board and then we all work together. And that will help me to build like an amazing team, an amazing collaboration with other teams as well, in CarWow and before. And I absolutely enjoy it.
Awesome. Talking about the teams, with a team of 5 across analysts, as far as I understood, from your background, engineers, the scientists, how do you decide what your team owns versus what sits with marketing or the management team?
I think I was quite blessed with a lot of opportunities at CarWow to have a different like people in my team over the course of the time. So for a very long time, I had a few people who are full-time working with me at CarWow and an agency that is essentially an outsource resource I have. I can come to them and say, for the next quarter, I need a data scientist on board for lead generation prediction or something like this. And what this structure allowed me to create is to have an extra resource that is specifically proficient in that to solve the problem, while at the same time have a core team within the CarWow to solve problems day to day and drive decision making and everything around this. It doesn't work for every type of the business, and you need to be quite proficient in understanding how to build it. But this is exactly what unlocked an amazing opportunities within CarWow as we try to build it in.
Okay.
Again, right now, we have multiple people. We have a couple of people that are focused purely on marketing and supporting the marketing decision making. We have a couple of people supporting on the media decision making. We are building analytics engineering function, which is essentially a function that's going to be there to make sure the data is consistent across all the places where you use it. Is it the perfect structure for where we are right now? Probably yes, but not for every single business. And what I'm a huge advocate for is you need to be able to be very fluent in terms of how you structure it. For example, like my favorite example is like one of the hardest projects we had to build is to clean up an enormous amount of data about visitors on CarWow. So CarWow is a very big website. We have millions of visitors. We have a lot of events. And so I had a separate time, about 6 months, dedicated a consultant was working on cleaning that data and building the definitions. And it will be never possible to have a full-time person dedicated for 6 months to try so many strategies on defining that. But once that project was complete, with pretty much every single data set we have right now that somewhat connects to people being on the website is driven from that single project that we built a few years ago.
Okay, so your team operates like universal hub for the whole company, supporting the data. And who decides then the priority of what to tackle first, what to shift for later?
Depending on the stage, again, it all needs to be aligned. So for example, I work with marketing and media. I don't look at the product. I don't look at commercial. There's multiple teams that take care of that. And when I build marketing priorities is we sit down with director and a chief marketing officer, and there is a conversation happens. First thing, I come there and say, okay, tell me the top 3 things for the company that we are taking as a priority for the next quarter. And then what do you need my team's support on? And then we write it all down, making sure that this is on top. Then I bring there and say, from the functionality perspective, it's important for us to look at these things because they're going to be analysis or, for example, if you take incrementality, it takes multiple months of running it again and again and again to get a good outcome of your measurement. And this is not always something that's going to be driven from director of paid search. It can be analytical team that comes there and says, well, we need to do something next quarter. And then we put that on the list as well. And then we combine it together and see which of those things all together we need to take as a priority. And then we do this exercise over and over and over again. There is a quarterly exercise. There is a weekly exercise where things can come up and come down on the priority. But again, it's a conversation. What I absolutely don't like is when there's only one person, only one side in that conversation tries to have 100% of priority aligned. If marketing is the only one who tells analytics what needs to be done, then there is never a comeback to there and saying, well, this is actually a great thing we can do for you 2 months from now. Like, for example, in 2023, you could start getting Google Search Console data. This is not something marketing would ever know, but then analytics can come there and say, well, this integration is going to save you that much time, and you need to start collecting it as early as possible. And this is where the conversation happens.
Okay, so instead of receiving the requests, you act like proactive consultants in that case, and full stack partners.
100%. But you need to remember that it's not a given. For you to be able to come there and provide ideas, you need to build a relationship. You need to make sure that you communicate it in the right way. You need to translate it in a business metrics and KPIs and something that is important for the company. If you come there and say, well, there's an amazing agentic solution and I want to do it because it's fun, it's not going to get prioritized.
Makes sense. For sure. The most impactful things usually take the top of the list in the roadmap. All right, I want to talk about the emerging and popular technologies. I know that you led the move to server-side first tracking at CarWow, and I like the topic of server-side because I was working at the company where server-side was the core technology. So you claimed that there was a 10% uplift in signal quality. Can you please briefly walk me through what that migration actually looked like and what the business felt on the other side of it?
There are two different parts of the server-side tracking for CarWow. One of them happened earlier, which is essentially we collect data about the major things happening in our database. Let's imagine you sell a car. When you sell a car, there is an auction where dealerships are going to go and bid towards that, and eventually somebody's going to win. You're not going to be waiting on the website for this to happen. So for us to send data to Google, we would need to send this through server-side connection, through the Google Ads data manager, or through Google Ads offline conversion. So that thing happened quite some time ago. We always had this technology, at least for many, many years. And in about 2024, a new version of that technology came out, which is EC for leads or enhanced conversion for leads. And this is where you send the same information to Google, but now you're allowed to add a PII or email, phone number, other information about it. And you have a multiple different identifiers to match with what Google information has. And the cool thing about that technology is that there is a lot of things undocumented about what it does compared to what is documented. And one of them is if you just send click IDs through the Google Ads API, it will never do the cross-device connection. It just doesn't do that. So if the person has multiple different devices across it, it will only stitch, even if you have data-driven attribution, it will only stitch it across one device. Whereas if you start sending PII, it will actually connect it cross devices because it will use different identifier matching logic. So switching to the PII pure, so the solution that connected both OCI and PII did not increase the number of conversions, but it changed the distribution of conversions within the Google Ads. And we made a public case where essentially we had up to 120% conversion increase in YouTube, about 24% conversion increase in demand gen, and some reduction in search one, but somebody will had to lose the conversions because it's a zero-sum game, right? But then we made another experiment and said, what if we start sending everything? So we have a PII, and when people did not come from Google, we're just still going to send it, assuming they consented, and compare basically all the conversions versus the just click IDs. And we realized that drives another 7 to 8% conversion. So this is one of the things you can do straight away without doing any server-side GTM. Then we went further into this conversation, said, well, we need to build server-side Google Tag Manager, which by the way have been a huge buzz like a few years ago. So we're kind of like coming a bit late in a way. So that was another big shift, because what server-side GTM allows you to do is it gives you full control of the data, but by itself, it doesn't increase the number of conversions. By itself is still like what I didn't know when we went into this is that you need to have a normal Google Tag Manager sending data to the server-side Google Tag Manager. And if your normal Google Tag Manager doesn't capture a conversion, your server-side Google Tag Manager wouldn't capture as well. And so we went in all of these like deep conversations, how it works and what's inside of it, and how we get to the 10% conversion figure. Is essentially we had to move all of our Google Tag Manager into first-party mode, or is it now called Google Tag Gateway, GTG. Besides that, we moved all the conversion tags from GTM to server-side GTM to reduce the size of it and increase the speed load. And then putting all of this like kind of small implementations in place, we also used and Stapes solution, like they're number one on the market. They're absolutely amazing. They have an alternative version of GTM script that allows you to bypass certain limitations with it. Like if you put all of this together, we start measuring one and another, and we found that there's a 10% more conversions with the server-side GTM. We measured it on Facebook events specifically. And we think it has to do with the fact that there is more time to send this conversion. There is more conversions coming from because of first party mode. They're cleaner, they're easier to work with. But it's like, it was such a bigger project than I ever thought it would be when we just embarked on this journey.
That sounds very complicated and very insightful, by the way. So I think the biggest contradiction in what you said, that actually, despite server-side technology exists for a pretty long period of time since cookies started to deprecate, it's still not very well formalized, and like you won't find a lot of applicable things in the documentation to your specific business case, and you still has to experiment a lot in order to find the right setup of this technology for your business needs.
And I would say server-side tracking, there again, the two different parts of it. There's a server-side Google Tag Manager, and there's a server-side like data warehouse to the API. Like data warehouse to API, if you have an application, you should go and do that. It's absolutely amazing, and it allows you to do a lot of different things. Server-side GTM has lots of benefits, but unless you have a good dedication to actually get it over the line, you should be really careful embarking on this journey, because it will test your understanding of how things are working to the limit.
Okay, if server-side technology is actually a base necessity in order to collect and store the data currently in the era of current restrictions, then what would you say about the buzzwords like incrementality, marketing mix modeling? I'm interested to understand at which scale of the business or organization it becomes, I would say, like efficient maybe to implement those in order to see the additional data and dimensions for the business growth?
I think it really depends on multiple different variables. The budget definitely is one of them. If you have 10,000 budget, 10,000 pounds a month budget a month, you shouldn't be really talking about MMM. There is no reason for that. But another one is also what your company uses as channels and what you're trying to get out of it. One of the use cases that is very popular with the startups and scale-ups, you have Google Ads, that is about 95% of your budget. You have Facebook Ads with another 4% of your budget. And then there's 1% of the budget that is essentially everything else. There is nothing that MMM is going to tell you besides the fact that Google drives the most amount of revenue. That's essentially what it's going to give you. And this is a very important thing, is that MMM, attribution, and incrementality, they all answer three very separate questions. Attribution is about how do you maximize the outcome of your campaigns as they are, driving a high quality traffic to the right pages in the right time. It's all about how do you build these funnels of users acquisition. It doesn't tell you very well of what channel participation actually means for that. I mean, you can go into very complex attribution modeling. You can have some kind of a like data-driven attribution with Markov chains around it. But essentially, it's just the same kind of like you only have a click touch points. Then incrementality is telling you a specific channel with a specific campaigns, how much incremental revenue do they drive to you? And this is an amazing instrument. But what people forget about it is that this instrument is very much tied to specific campaigns, specific creatives, and specific time. So if you run only one incrementality test on your Facebook campaigns and you say, well, that incrementality shows that or this, you're not going to actually get any answer because it measures a very specific circumstances. So for incrementality test to give you a good answer, you need to measure multiple things and you need to measure it over multiple different time periods.
Okay, so
this is an amazing instrument.
You mean that you have to follow a consistent framework in order to see the results by applying
Ideally,
it?
yes. Ideally, you should. But there is like a caveat to that, because if you're not going to MMM conversations, it's always better to have some incrementality testing than no incrementality testing. And then running in platform incrementality, it's essentially when you rely on the platform telling you the answer, is better than not having any incrementality testing. So, but if you do in platform Facebook and in platform Google Ads, those are going to be two different approaches to do different frameworks to do that.
Makes sense. Like
Another
directionally,
thing, Another very important thing is that it really depends on what data you send to platforms. So if you're tracking not resolved and not figured out, then it will not measure well.
makes sense. I just wanted to add that about the topic of not having it all or having something that having some kind of incrementality maybe won't answer all your questions, but will show you directionally where to move next.
Content, yeah, I totally agree. And then MMM is a very different beast, because MMM is about how do you allocate your budgets and how do you build a proper budgeting for the next year and how do you shift budget between channels. Again, for this to work, you need to have a multiple different incrementality testing, but you also need to be comfortable with stopping and starting campaigns and then making different budgets, basically changing how your marketing works. And what I see a lot is companies are very much, well, we have this framework. We're not changing this framework in any way. We want to measure it. But it's a correlation model. So if there is no variety in your data, it will not see how the correlation changes over time. It will come up with a very high level approximations. And those approximations are going to be taken as an absolute truth. And then people are going to make decisions on top of that. So essentially, this is a danger of data where just measuring something is not always good, because if the measurement is wrong, the outcome of this is going to be really, really wrong.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like you would see only templates instead of trends.
Yeah. But at the same time, if you have like lots of offline sales, you have lots of out of home, you have lots of like brand advertising, there is no way around of everything should be driving towards the geo experiment at MMM. And then everybody else is essentially in the middle of in between of these two steps. So it's like your company will be in its own step on this kind of like scale, and you need to understand how much resources you have, how much time you have, and how much outcome you're going to get out of it.
Okay, makes perfect sense. I want to touch a topic about AI. What is the situation with AI adoption across your team? How did you manage to adopt AI in your workflows and within your team?
We have been on a very interesting journey. I myself, like a huge AI enthusiast, I use AI every day for everything I can. It solves from every small problem at home I have to like big company issues that I work on. The team is also right now at 100% adoption. By that, I mean they use it to write code, to make analysis, prepare for the meeting. It's a usage for everything. But at the same time, there's a huge scale. Like you can use it, but you can use it to 100%. You can use it only within what you know. Anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is adoption by itself is not about people using it. It's about people getting value out of it. And what we learned the hard way is that you can't come to everybody and say, use AI now. Like it just doesn't work. Every single person has their own view on things. They have their own problems. And our job is, number one, to make sure that they understand how they can use it. So for example, for analytics and data engineering, we have built a set of skills and instructions and framework, and essentially scaffolding around it, how it can run DBT, how it can run different things around it. And then we shipped it and they say, how this is amazing. And we say that people don't really use it because they don't understand what to do with it. And so what we did next is we sat down person by person, sitting down together and showing with their use cases, with their problems they have, how it can be used. And what we found out that in some cases, the scaffolding had to be tweaked because it doesn't really solve the problem the person had. But in another case, it takes a few step-by-step examples for them to become a full believers, enthusiast about the solution. And then once you have it, you start having this chain effect where they start to tell it to other people. You kind of like move it around the whole analytics, what we have right now. And then the new things come in, like, well, wait, this is new functionality. And then you have to repeat this process all over again. But as long as you have this good culture, it's definitely a really fun thing to do. But at least I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's like evergreen self-improving loop.
In a way.
I'm interested to know if one could just ask an AI what's driving their CAC up and get a synthesized answer. What does the analytics function then still have to build underneath for that answer to be worth trusting?
So this is a simple question that's probably going to take me another hour and a half to answer. Look, there are multiple problems. Let's start with a beautiful life. Well, the world is beautiful and everything is fine. Well, AI agent, any AI, has two main properties. It's a people's pleaser, so it tries to please you as much as it can. So it will deviate and it will bias towards things that you think is true and the way you ask the question. Second, it's an automation system. So if you don't know what needs to be done, I won't be able to automate it much because you basically just ask, go figure. Make me rich, make me happy. Like there's nothing that the AI can go and do about it much. It can give you a few advices, but that's pretty much it. So you need to solve two things. It's a bias problem and giving a framework. Analytics goal or analytics engineer's goal is to create an ideal scenario semantic layer. Semantic layer is a document that connects the raw data in a data warehouse with a basically language definition of what revenue is. Once you have that, you need to have a second piece, which is an automation layer. It's basically something that can take a semantic layer and execute queries against them. It can be a Looker. Looker is an expensive BI tool from Google that essentially has a built-in semantic layer and an MCP. If you have Looker, you can connect it to Claude and you can ask questions against your data, and it will make sure that every time it references revenue, it will be exactly the revenue definition that it has. Every time you say what's the number of users, it will know exactly what users is. That is not for every company because it's an expensive solution and it requires quite a lot of working around it. You can have a simpler solution. For example, there is an open source agent, I think it's called Now, NAO, which is the lightweight solution exactly for that. It has a semantic layer and a really beautiful chat. You connect it to Claude API and you can ask questions. 90% of the users not going to have any of those. They're going to have an MCP to Google Analytics, MCP to Google Ads. It's like, tell me the user, like how the, and it works for small businesses. If you're really small business, it works. But the danger of that is that you put a lot of emphasis on analytics work on agent. Agent is a language model. It was never meant to do any of those. So you would always have to avoid that where possible. You should put analytics work where it belongs, which is a data warehouse. It's either Snowflake, BigQuery, Enterprise, multiple of them. Or if absolutely you like small business ever, Python, pandas, all of these things, but you should not be asking in the chat on like what's the mathematical, like it will come up with the good answers, but it will eventually come up with the bad answers because it's not how it works. The final thing I'm going to say on that, my favorite example, if you go to AI agent and ask to come up with a top 100 best headlines to use on a landing page, it will stop producing good headlines at about like 30, 40, because at this point, they're no longer most probable answers. They're so noisy, it doesn't actually know what to do. So if you come there and say, what's the top 100 keywords, a similar problem occurs. It needs to have some engine behind of it to understand how to make sort, pivot, and that engine usually is a data warehouse.
So AI still needs the sort of a map and vocabulary to decipher correctly what the user wants from it.
Hunts and tools. AI is like a very, very smart intern that works for you. If you give a very good instruction, the intern will come up with the best possible answer. But then the intern needs the tools, the pointer, documentation, and everything around it.
Yeah, I think people just prone to oversimplify all those complicated concepts right now, and as a result, we get bad input in and bad output out.
There's a harsher version of the saying, but yes,
I was trying.
we have seen stakeholders do that, and they basically ask Claude for certain questions, and then what happens is Claude makes an assumption on line 2, not line 3, and then the whole other page, like all other pages, are wrong because that assumption is wrong. I think for now, as we sit in like 2026, that's fine because the cost of wrong assumption is still less than the cost of people not using AI. So like you can't have a safe AI journey. It's either you can like people on board of it and then people start producing something wrong, or you just don't have them. using it. I think it's more beneficial today for the business to have as much people on it as possible. A few months from now, we are going to be in the situation where it becomes really dangerous, and we need to be, okay, how do we control that? How do we make sure there is a guardrails in there? And what people forget a lot is AI should not be used to do exactly the same thing every single day that has deterministic output. Like if you ask AI what the top campaign is every Monday, you need a BI dashboard. You need AI to analyze things and come up with answers that are not deterministic, that go and check what my competitors are doing for the last week, what landing pages talks about. Or like you can come there and sign up for multiple email flows and say, summarize what they're doing. This is amazing because this is all undeterministic. But getting the performance of a few campaigns, that's a BI dashboard.
Yeah, that makes sense. Last one, and I want it practical. If a CMO or head of marketing listening wants to make one change next week to how their team trusts and uses marketing data, what change that should be?
I don't know, but let me think about it. I'm not sure if the trust is, well, yeah, trust is actually a big problem. I'm going to try to answer it in a different way. What I see a lot is a lot of companies need analytics solutions, but people who make decisions don't know that analytics solutions are needed. Like if we take an example from real life, you might feel physically bad because you don't have enough vitamins in your body, but because you don't know that might be a solution, you try to look for like, oh, I'm not sleeping well, maybe I should go to sleep earlier. No, you just need to go to the doctor, make that blood test and realize that some things are missing. Not for everybody, obviously. The same happens in companies. Like marketing struggles a lot because they don't have a proper analytical harness or tools to surface it. What I love a lot about nowadays is that you can build that really quickly. Like most companies have can have an agentic BI built over the few weeks as long as they use the standard frameworks. If you use Google Ads, GA4, if you use Facebook, all of this can be put together and combined together really, really quickly. And then you can surface it in Claude and people can start asking questions that otherwise would take weeks for them to answer. But at the same time, I have seen like multiple, like 15 Excel files that they shift around, and it's 2026 and Excel is still a huge part of day-to-day jobs. So if that's what it is, you probably need a good analytical solution that's going to come and sort it out for you.
I agree with you. Marketing should eliminate the category of questions like, we don't know what we don't know. Roman, thank you. This was exactly the conversation I wanted to have about the data and analytics. Where can people find your work or reach you out?
On LinkedIn. So I hope you're going to leave a link somewhere. And if not, it's basically Roman Petrochenkov on LinkedIn. I should be the only one there. And I'm very happy for people to just reach out to me if you have questions, if you need any analytical consultancy, or you need a team to be recommended to solve certain problems, just send me a message. I'm very happy to help you out.
I will place the link into the description. Please reach out Roman to provide the feedback or for consultation. He's an amazing specialist and he would recommend you the best things to do. That was Measurement Where. One piece of measurement infrastructure per episode with the people who actually build it. If this was useful, subscribe on YouTube or follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to be my next guest or you want to work with me, everything is at measurement-where.com. I'm Kostya. See you in the next one. Thank you.